Okay, folks, welcome back. Now, it's you've no idea how excited I am for this one. When we both arranged this podcast, it's been nothing short of excitement for me with this. Being a Dundee fan growing up, this gentleman was a big part of me going to Dens as a kid, and I remember him being a player. I remember him being a manager. I remember him being a captain. Um, at Dens, spanning well over a decade. Barry Smith, absolutely delighted to have you on. How are you, mate?
I'm good. You make me feel really old now, Ross.
No, honestly, the first season I went to Dens was the Scottish Cup final year in 2003. So it was. I think I went to 6 games that season or something like that, and the final was at the end of the season. It was the first time I'd actually seen them get beat that season, and I was gutted, absolutely gutted. But no, honestly, it's actually you have no idea. I'm kind of starstruck at the moment with this, so it's really I'm really happy to have you on. So I think it's important we, however, go back to how it all began with you and how your love for football started. So, what was your sort of childhood footballing memories? I mean, who did you support when you were growing up?
Well, I'm actually from the West Coast and I grew up in Paisley. So I followed St Mirren. Was fortunate that they won the Scottish Cup in '87 against United. So that was obviously fate by some reason. But, I followed St Mirren as a kid. I played with local team Barhead Boys Club, went through Waverley. Played with St Mirren Boys Club as a kid, and then I got signed on S-Form with Celtic, and I went and played with the boys club for a year, and then moved on to Gifton Up North, which was a sort of feeder club, until such times as I was full time at Celtic.
How was it that Celtic move came about?
I played with Barhead Boys Club. They were a decent team at the time. I think one of the players went into QPR, a couple of others played senior football, so it wasn't a bad team. But I think it was when I was under 14, I signed an S-Form with Celtic. So I was training with them a couple of nights a week, training with Barhead, and then eventually come when I turned 16, I got asked to go to Celtic Boys Club, played there for a year, and then got asked to go full time. But I had stayed on at school up until 6th year. So I'd done my hires, I got 4 hires, and I had the opportunity to go to university, but decided the opportunity to go full time with Celtic was too much to give away, and took that route, which I'm glad it worked out for me at the end.
Yeah, no, perfect. You see it sometimes with players that it doesn't tend to work out and they have nothing to fall back on. But so you said you were quite academic. What was it you were going to go and study if in an alternate universe of Barry Smith, where you didn't become a footballer? What were you going to do?
I'd actually been accepted into physics at university. I quite liked the sciences. Not so much biology, if I'm being honest, but I like chemistry and physics, and got good hires at them. So I was accepted into university. But as I say, I decided that I wanted to give football. It's everybody's dream to play with a senior team. Getting the opportunity to play with Celtic was just a dream come true. So it was too big an opportunity to knock back.
Yeah, definitely. And even being a St Mirren fan growing up, the size of Celtic and Rangers.
Yeah.
you'd be mad not to take that opportunity, definitely.
Aye,
Yes.
I was probably disappointed that St Mirren never came in for us, but I'd already, signed. When I signed my S-Form, St Mirren actually came in. I signed it was the Friday, and St Mirren came in and tried to sign me on the Monday, but I always felt that it was because they knew Celtic had signed me that they decided they wanted. So, I was glad that I'd signed at Celtic, and, grew up with a lot of good players and good people at the club.
Yeah, perfect. And who was your youth coach at Celtic when you first came in?
The reserve coaches were Bobby Lennox and Benny Rooney. Great experience, obviously. Bobby, a Lisbon Lion, and he'd a lot of experience in the game, and Benny, who'd been a manager, was now taking the reserve team. He'd been a manager at Partick and other places, and I learned a lot from them. It was a hard school back then, but you had to grow up quickly, and I certainly did that. My first couple of years there.
Yeah, no, and what was it? You obviously said there was quite a few players in that team. Who do you remember as being the best players in that youth team?
Brian McLaughlin. I grew up with him, and he went on to play a lot of games with Celtic, and he went down south to Wigan. I think he's now the under-17 Scotland coach, and he was probably the standout at the time. He very skillful. For his height, he wasn't the biggest, but he knew how to look after himself. And there's probably a couple of guys in there that never made it. Or made it to the level that myself and Brian did. That were very good players. Robert White was a centre back I played alongside at the time. Good player, but ended up it just didn't work out for him. Lee Collins, a midfielder that ended up going to Partick as well. A lot of good players in the team, but unfortunately, not everybody can make it at Celtic.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it would have been a good ground in those days as well. It's completely different now. I mean, you back coaching at Dens, which we'll cover later on, but you'll probably see a massive difference now with the kids than what it is then.
I think that the whole academy system, is very different. Whether it's right or wrong is a different question, but I would. At the time when the S-Forms allowed you, I thought the S-Forms allowed you to play more football. You could play with your school, you could play with, your boys' club, you could play with your senior club, and that's where you learn most. I thought was always playing all these games, but I don't think they're allowed to play as many now.
Yeah, we always a right back, Barry.
I probably grew up playing centre back, but my height. Probably, I just wasn't tall enough. I played a lot of games at Celtic at centre back, in the reserves. But then I sort of get moved to right back, and that's where I actually made my debut at Celtic at left back. But I had been playing right back for the reserves. And then when I came up to Dundee, I signed as a right back, but ended up playing centre back, or later on in my career, I played as a centre mid. So. I was one of the players that, as long as I played, I'd give them everything. I didn't mind where I played. I felt comfortable in most positions. So, as long as I was playing, I was happy.
Yeah, no, and you alluded to it a little bit there, but your debut, whenabouts was that? What year was that? And what are your memories about your call up to the first team and how that debut came about?
Well, it was a surprise. I trained with the reserves on the Friday. I got a phone call. I'd already made my way home, and I got a phone call saying that I was travelling with the first team on the Saturday to Falkirk, and I was going to be in the bench. So it was everything happened quite quickly. I started on the bench, and then I was on after, I think it was about 40 minutes. And I can't remember who it was, got injured, but I get put on at left back, and that was me making my debut. So it's a proud moment. Make my debut. Unfortunately, I think we get beat that day, but it was still the opportunity that we play with Celtic's first team was brilliant.
You also were capped for Scotland under-21s. Do you remember much about that and how those caps came about?
Actually, it was. I don't know if you remember the Toulon tournament. I think it's called something different now. It was. I think I'd made my debut that season with Celtic in the first team, and get the call up to playing under-21s, and I think all the games were in Toulon. It was quite it was a sort of mixture of like younger players with a couple of experienced players like Scott Booth and Ian Jess, who were excellent players at the time, for Aberdeen. I think Christian Daly was there. It was a sort of mixture, young and older 21s, and We didn't do particularly well in that. That's the tournament, but it was great experience and exposure for myself, because if I'm being honest, when I played in it, I felt, out my depth at that stage. But I was only 17, so I probably did another couple of years, and I maybe have enjoyed the experience a wee bit more.
Mm-hmm. And who was the manager in that team? Do you remember?
It was Tommy Craig. He took it. I knew Tommy was the assistant manager at Celtic, or was always involved. He actually signed me because it was sat in between managers. Billy McNeil had just lost his job, and Liam Brady was just coming in. So it was actually Tommy that signed me. So I knew him, relatively well from being at Celtic. So he was a manager of the 21s at the time. And I think I can't remember everyone that played, but it was a good standard player. As I say, Scott Booth and Ian Jess pretty much stood out to me, but I think Paul Telfer that went down south played. Guy Dan Salter was a centre back. Christian Dale obviously had a great career. So there's all good players in that team, although we didn't do well in that tournament.
Yeah. So sort of 20 odd games for Celtic down the line. You then get a move to Dens Park. Now, how did that move come about? It was a swap deal for Morton Veghorst, wasn't it?
Aye, I wasn't playing. As you say, it was 20 games in 5 years. So I wanted to play first team football. I felt I was good enough to play at Celtic. Tommy Burns was the manager, and I disagreed with him at the time when he said, he came to us and said, "Listen, I think it's better if you move on and get first team football." I did want first team football, but I believed it could be there. But in hindsight, Tommy was a great guy, and he knew what was going to be best for me. And when I look back, that's exactly what he knew, that I would play, first team football more regular at Dundee than what I would at Celtic, and it was time for me to move on. And obviously they were wanting Morton Veghorst at the time as well, so that probably helped the situation. So it basically came about. I spoke to Jim Duffy, and he pretty much sold the club to me. And I didn't take a lot of thinking because I felt that I was going to get first team football, and after having spoke to Tommy Burns, I felt it was going to be the right move for me. And if I'm being honest, never looked back from the day I arrived in Dundee.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is sort of you were pretty much in straight away when you went to Dundee, and then you were made captain within about 2 seasons. So it definitely seemed to be the right move anyway for you personally.
Aye, well, I mean, my debut at Dens, I think we're 2-0 up after 12 minutes against the league leaders, Dunfermline. And I thought, this is brilliant. What if I came to here? We're on the up. Obviously just lost the cup final to Aberdeen. But then by the end of the game, we lost 4-2. So it was a bit, put everything in perspective, I guess, as my debut. But as I say, I came up, and I think everybody knows what type of player I am. No flashy, but everybody knows what they're going to get off me. And I think sometimes captains are, I think nowadays captains are probably selected on what they do for the team rather than somebody that's going and shouting and bawling at players. Sometimes you needed to do that, but I think leading by example is far better as a captain. I think that's what I did, and I think I can't remember if it was Jim Duffy or John McCormick that gave me the captaincy, but I think that they seen that in me and seen that I was a leader on the pitch and off the pitch, and that's why they gave me the captaincy.
Yeah, and so you spent over 10 years I think it was about 11 years at Dundee. What would you say probably your best season playing for Dundee?
Oh, that's a hard question. There's a lot of tough times, a lot of good seasons. I think under Jockey, when we finished, we get promoted, and I think it was 97, 98 we get promoted, and then the season after that, I think we finished 5th in the Premier League, which was an incredible feat, given, the players. It was just an all-round, team effort to get us there. And that was the team that got us promoted pretty much stayed together the season after. Jockey added, obviously, Tom Coyne and Willie Faulkner and a couple of others. But in general, the team stuck together. And I think that was one of the main factors that we did so well, because we all knew how each other played. We got on with each other on and off the park. And it was a really good group at that point.
Yeah, and I could imagine with Dundee, it's never a dull moment. In terms of the extremities that you've seen at Dundee, you've probably seen highs way up here and then lows in terms of administrations and everything. You must have seen pretty much everything.
Aye, I mean, there's been plenty of lows, but there's been a lot of highs as well, and people will always remember the administration and how bad it was. But I think you try and take something positive from everything, and the way that through the two administrations, the fans supported the club and made sure that the club survived, was the positive, that what a community can do for their own if they're in trouble. And I think that's a positive you can take out the twice for an administration. But there's also a lot of highs, as you say. We'd been in the Scottish Cup final when you first started supporting the club, and we get promoted, stayed in the Premier League for however many years, and again having the likes of when Ivano and Dario come in, and having been able to play alongside some of the players when they come in, are obviously real highs as well.
Yeah, no, I've got a cracker of a story for you here. So Barry, you were my favourite Dundee player growing up. So as I alluded to earlier, it was 2003 I started going. So you were my favourite player because you were the only name I could spell in the team. I was 6 years old, and because we had Kishnashvilis, we had Ravanellis, we had Carranzas, Barry Smith was the only name I could spell. So you ended up being my favourite player out of that. So that was how it sort of came about. Six-year-old Ross. So no, you said it's brilliant players, absolutely amazing players that played for Dundee over that time, and players that we still sing about to this day. So although it ended badly, we've got memories for life, I guess. What would you say is probably the best player out of everyone you played with at Dens?
Kenigia stood out, but Kenigia stood out because he was such a good player, but he was so good off the park as well. He was just a good guy, and he tried to help the younger ones. He stayed behind for training, and also on the park he was, electric, and he was just a great finisher. Namzadze is probably the most skillful I've ever played with. Just a out and out football player. He just, again, he was a good guy as well. I just wish he could speak more English, because by the time we'd got his jokes translated, the joke was lost, but he was I mean, he tried to mix. He was a real good guy as well. But you talk about the foreign players, but there's also Big Lee Wilkie, who I think was destined, if he hadn't got the cruciate or the problems with his cruciate, was destined to, he would have moved on from Dundee to somewhere far higher. I think he played with Scotland, scored for Scotland. Just a very good defender, comfy in the ball. He's a modern day centre back, back in the day. And he was excellent to play alongside. Gavin Ray obviously had a great career as well. He sort of went on to play with Rangers in Cardiff, but at Dundee he was a real workhorse, and he excellent to play alongside when I played in the middle of the park, because he did all my running. I could just sit in defence so that he didn't have to get back in, you know.
Yeah, no, I've met Gavin Ray before. He's an absolute cracking guy off the pitch as well. He's a really, really good guy. What manager would you say you probably worked closest with at Dens that you seem to bounce off with the best, do you think?
I think you learn from all of the managers. I was probably close with Jim Duffy just because he signed me initially, and then when he come back, you know, we went through administration, and he was always there. And you know, again, very good guy that you know he sort of tried to look after you know the players that were there, and you know through difficult times. Jockey was also, you know, I still keep in touch with Jim, but I was probably closer to Jockey at the time just because he was, you know, there for the length of time that he was, and you know he's a very good coach, and you know I used a lot of his training when like I went first into coaching with 18s and into management. So they two are probably the closest that I was with. But as I say, you learn from all the managers here: Cowboy McCormick, the Benettis, Alan Kernan. You know, you learn from them all, and that's you know part and parcel of football. I think and that's one of the good things. You know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that Scottish Cup final I went to, I have to ask you, see that shot that hit the post after about 3 minutes? I can't help but think how things going forward might have changed for Dundee had that gone in. I just, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. It'd have been better to celebrate. I could tell you that. But I guess when I hit it, you know, when I hit the shot and I saw where it was going, I'm thinking, oh, it's got a chance. And then I remembered I'd only scored about 3 goals in my career. And I'm thinking, there's no chance that's going to, you know. So it's, listen, it was, you know, if it went in, it would have been bedlam. I don't think we would have, I think we would have won the cup if that went in. You know, because I think Rangers were in their last legs at that point. You know, they were, you know, tired for that game, given everything they'd put into winning the league that season. So, you know, actually, there was a bit of frustration, and you know, the fact that we felt that was probably the best opportunity of winning the cup, and we never probably did ourselves justice on the day.
Yeah, no, as I say, I kind of remember it. And although I was only 6 years old at the time, I still remember a packed Dundee end of 23,000 or whatever it was supporters, and obviously never seen the like since. And we never seem to go to Hampden nowadays. But no, it was amazing, and yeah, no, it was a great day for all supporters involved. So obviously, 11 years at Dens. You decided to leave. Or, I don't know if did you decide to leave, or how did that come about, your departure at Dens?
Well, I think at the end of that season, myself and unfortunately Alan Kernahan had lost his job at that point. So myself and Bobby Mann, another one of the good guys in football, were interim managers, and I knew that having spoken to Peter that I wasn't, you know, going to get like become the manager. I still felt a lot I could play for, you know, another few years anyway. And you know, given that another new manager was coming in and the age I was at, I felt that that was the time to move on. And just by coincidence, I'd get a phone call from a friend who'd played out in Iceland, Davy Winnie, who'd actually played with Dundee. But I got a phone call saying, listen, there's an opportunity out in Iceland, would you consider it? And I spoke to my wife and said, listen, I think that my time's done at Dundee. I think it's time to move on. I felt I was getting stale as well, to be honest. I'd been there that long that I needed a change. And my wife was quite happy to up sticks and move across there. And that was a decision made. So from getting a phone call, maybe I think it was on the Thursday, I was away within 5 days. And I was playing in the Icelandic Premier Division, you know, 5 days later. So that all happened quite quickly, but I just felt it was time to move on at that stage and give a new manager coming in a clean slate to work from.
Yeah, and how did you find it over in Iceland? Did you feel homesick at all, or what was the cultural differences over there than in Scotland?
No, Iceland was brilliant. I'd like, if I get the opportunity to coach over there, I'd go in a minute. It's a beautiful country. The people are very nice once you get in their circle, and they're very good to you and look after you. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time over there. I played in Europe, I played in the Champions League qualifiers, we won the league. So there's a lot of success out there as well. And it's just a nice country. And as I say, it's like if I got the opportunity to go back over there, I'd certainly take it.
So you had a couple of loans back to Scotland as well. Was that because your time in Iceland was done, or how did they come about?
No, but I mean their season ran May to October, and like I didn't feel it was right getting paid from October till their pre-season would have probably started January or February, and I felt it was better to be playing games. So we came to an agreement that when I went back home, I'd have a month off. I'd then start training myself, and if there was a loan option comes up, then I would go and take that. So I was the club were happy with me playing between January and May for a Scottish club, and I thought it was better for me that I played because I mean you can get fit in pre-season, but for me playing games is where I got my fitness, and it just allowed me to continue to play over here and be closer to family, but obviously knowing that I was going back in May for 4 or 5 months, which was fine.
Obviously, finished time in Scotland, Iceland. You came to the sort of end of your career for playing. Why was it you finished at that particular time?
Well, I come back from Iceland in 2008, I think it was, and Jockey had just been named manager again at Dundee. And he phoned me up and said, listen, there's an opportunity for you to come in here and coach the 18s. And I've, been asked to go back under Jockey to a club that I'd been at for, 11 years. I was never going to say no to that. So, I agreed to go back. But within that, Jockey said to us, listen, if you get a part-time club that wants to take you, then, as long as you're doing your work and you're doing your coaching, then, we're happy for you to go and play. And I actually played with Brecon for another 2 years, I think it was, while I was coaching. So I kind of had the best of both worlds. And then at the end up when I ended up stopped playing at Brecon because Dundee went back into administration and I got offered the manager's job at Dundee. So that pretty much put paid to my playing career, because I knew being manager at Dundee, I had to, really, concentrate fully on that.
Yeah, chucked in at the deep end, definitely. At Dundee, that's for sure. Yeah, bizarre circumstances. Second administration in 7, 8 years or whatever it was at the time. What are your sort of favourite memories about that season? Because every Dundee fans knows exactly what season I'm on about here. It's the famous Defiant season. Why was there so much team spirit in that squad?
I think, when you go back to the day that the club went into administration, basically the staff and the players were called in one at a time. Now, you either come out knowing that you'd kept your job, or you come out you'd lost your job. And I think everybody stayed and sat in the dressing room, and it was like obviously very distressing for some of them because their teammate, the guy that sat next to, was losing their job, and they were keeping their job, and that's not a nice thing. But I think because they were a good group, they wanted to make sure that they stuck together for the guys that had lost their job. They hadn't lost it for nothing, and the guys that kept their job were grateful for having that job. And I think because everyone was then on the same page and everyone was grateful for keeping their jobs, then that team spirit came, the team just bonded from there. And they were a very good group of players, a lot of talented players, but, I think throughout the season, it was more just the fact that they played as a team and they stuck together. And, they knew that the fans were behind them and they wanted to give the fans back something on the pitch, something to be happy about, something to cheer for, given the circumstances. And I think they certainly did that season.
Yeah, 23 games unbeaten as well. Did you find that you didn't really have to motivate the players? Did you think they did the motivation themselves?
I think you just give them pointers and why they're doing it. And as I say, it was a good team. I think when they were in the start administration, I think they were maybe 7th or 8th in the league, which probably was underachieving for that group of players. But that determination to make sure that the points deduction that we'd been given didn't, put us down, just galvanised everyone. And I think, if anything, the fact that it was 25 points probably galvanised the whole club, because everybody knew it was an injustice. Nobody disagrees with the fact that we should be punished. We didn't pay wages, we went into administration, so you should be punished. That's correct. But I think giving us 25 points was, it was pretty much trying to put the final nail in the coffin. And they, along with the fans and the backroom staff and the office staff and the players, didn't want that to happen. And I think they showed that, collectively, whatever job they were asked to do.
Yeah, so it's just I just can't believe how we managed to get out of that situation. And it's the only time in my life where I've gone to Dens every week knowing we're winning. Like it was such a bizarre time because that's never happened since, that's for sure. But it's we just knew we were winning. And then the game that sticks out to me is definitely the Wraith Rovers game at home. We were 1-0 down, and then there was 10 minutes to go. Harkins fires in a free kick, which everybody seems to forget about, but it was like a free kick from about 40 yards into right in the postage stamp top corner. And then obviously Neil McCann came back as a trialist to help out the club. Craig Robertson also become a trialist for the club as a Dundee fan. It really was a difficult time.
No, there was a couple of really good guys. Brian Jackson, the administrator, just let us go on with the job. He knew what he had to do to financially help the club, or to get it back to a place where we wouldn't get put into liquidation, and we could come out of administration. And the chief executive at the time, Harry McLean, worked his socks off, and he found these loopholes. If I'm being honest, I would never have known where to start with trying to get Craig Robertson or also Jake Hyde at the time, where we're able to sign them as trialists or amateurs, and we were able to use them for 3 games, and it was 3 important games that both of them were used for. And obviously we're grateful to the guys that come back and played, like Neil McCann, that come back and played for 3 games. I think he only played 2, but they come back and gave up their time, because they only get paid for it. So they basically did it out, the goodness of their hearts and their affection for Dundee. So it was tough, but Harry, as I say, Harry McLean knew all the sort of loopholes, and he really helped with the football side of things in terms of getting these signings, and I don't think that should be forgotten either.
And obviously the emergence of talents as well. Craig Forsyth, obviously being the kind of standout, I think, of that season, being just a kid chucked in at the deep end, and then playing really, really well that season. And I think my favourite game out of that whole season was actually the one at the final day at Dens. Not the final game of the season, but the final day at Dens, where we played Partick Thistle in front of pretty much a full stadium. as a celebration for everything that the team had achieved that season. It was amazing.
Aye, I think the culmination of everybody pulling together, and after that game, it was just a massive release of relief. That we'd got through it together. From the fans to the players, the sponsors. Everybody pulled together, and I think it doesn't happen that often that the whole club's pulling in the same direction. And I think at that stage, everybody knew where we wanted to go, and everybody was going the same direction. And we just wanted Dundee to stay up, and thankfully we managed to do that.
Managed it, yeah. I'm so glad we did, because I hate to think what might have actually happened to the club had we gone down. So, no, but we stayed up, moved into the next season. Obviously, put your own stamp on the team. We finished second, and at the end of that season, we then ended up going up because Rangers went into administration themselves. So it's what do you remember about that summer? Because obviously it was, you knew very little time before, but what do you remember about that summer? How quickly did it come about? I know that we weren't officially in the Premier League until the day before, but how long before did you actually know that we were going to be in the Premier League?
I think it was only about a week that we actually found out. Now, through the summer, that like my focus is in building an attacking team that's going to win the division, the championship. When you go into the Premiership, that changes. That's just natural. If you're a promoted team, then you've got to probably look a wee bit more defensively, just to get you through the first couple of months, because that's probably the hardest. But we went into the league with a lot of new players, a lot of attackers. It was new to me as well. It was a different level for me, and I'm not scared to say that. And I think if we all had another season, I firmly believe that we would have won the league that season. The championship, and with the players that we had assembled, and getting them together, and getting them to gel together. The following year, if we'd been promoted, we'd have been a far stronger squad, and we could have added defensive players to the attack-minded team that we had. Unfortunately, when you're building a squad for the championship to win the championship, it's different when you get put into the Premiership. I wouldn't, folk will challenge that, but I firmly believe that a season together with 8 players, they'd have been far stronger as a squad going into the Premier League. Unfortunately, that never happened, and we're thrust into the Premier League. We've got 7 days to get players in, which is obviously very difficult at that time of the year. And we probably didn't start off the league as well as what we would have wanted. But given the circumstances, that's just, it was always going to be tough, and we were always going to be up against it.
Yeah, and as you alluded to, it was a difficult season. Obviously that led up to your second departure at Dens. Do you feel like you should have been given more time? Do you think?
Listen, in any walk of life, you can sit and overthink it, think about it. If it was down to footballing reasons and results weren't good enough, then you lose your job. I think, given the factors and the story behind where we were, then you always believe that you should have got more time. But it's past. I take positives for everything I've done at Dundee. And it's been a steep learning curve at that point. And, I certainly got away from it in the knowledge that I've learned, So, I think you've just got to get on with life. These things happen and you move on, and you've got to move on quickly.
Yeah, and you didn't actually spend long out of football. You went and had a brief spell at Ross County youth coaching, and then moved to Alloa back into management. Was the plan for you at that point always to go back into management eventually?
I think, I would have always wanted to go back into management. I actually really enjoyed my job up at Ross County. Derek Adams and George were really good to me up there. I enjoyed taking the 18s. But I think deep down at that stage, I was wanting to be a manager, and I think they knew that if the opportunity came up, that I might move on. But they were happy to have me for the time that I was up there. So the chance to the opportunity at Alloa was, it was part time, but I was back in management and at a good club as well. So I didn't want to turn that chance down either.
Yeah, and you managed to lead the team to the Challenge Cup final as well, which was quite a credible feat for a team the size of Alloa.
Yeah, I mean the first season, I think I went in February, I think it was, and managed to keep them up, stay in the division, which for Alloa was a success. And then the following season, the Challenge Cup, we played Rangers in the semi-final. I think it was a really tough league that year. Hearts, Hibs, Rangers were all in the league, so we took points off Hibs. We beat Rangers in the semi-final of the Challenge Cup. I think we also drew with them at Ibrox. So there was a lot of good things happened at Alloa, and it was great to take them to a cup final as well. Unfortunately, I'd left by the time we got to the cup final, but that's again, that's football, and I was more than happy just to make sure that they got to the cup final, even though I wasn't involved in the actual day out.
Yeah, no, and then you obviously went down south to Aldershot. What was the thinking behind that? How did that move come about?
It was an opportunity to go back full time, and I'd been contacted to see if I'd be interested in it. And I thought, well, it's something different. The only thing I probably look back at is the timing. My wife was pregnant at the time, and she'd just given birth, and I moved away for like the first 3 or 4 months. My wife and my wee one stayed up here, so the timing wasn't great, and ultimately that's probably why I came back up the road. But I think it was just too good an opportunity again. You don't really get chances down south. What probably I should have done a wee bit more homework in terms of looking at the budget and stuff like that. Didn't realise how much money was actually spent in the National League. And in comparison to what Aldershot were spending, it wasn't very much. So, but again, you live and learn. But we managed to, I think they finished 16th that season, which was a decent return given, the constraints that were under at that time.
And a lot of players and managers that start up in Scotland and then go down south talk about the difference in style. Did you find that you had to change your philosophy to suit the style down south, or did you keep your same principles?
No, to be honest, my philosophy is winning games. I don't. It's very difficult to set out, a style when you're getting into a club because you're using somebody else's players 9 times out of 10. So you've got to try and get the players into a shape that fits them, and that can change. The principles are, working hard and being team players should never change, and that's something that I always instill in the players that I work with. But down there, it was a lot more physical, a lot more probably the games. The game's quick up here, but it's also quick down there, but more physical. And a lot of the teams, so there were some good teams that played football, but they had good players, and they'd invested heavily in the players. But I think you've sort of got to find your style to fit, the personnel that you've got down there.
Yeah, and obviously you then moved back up to Scotland to coach and manage at a few different places. Did you find managing it part-time, did it suit around your job at the time?
Well, I come back up and I started writing for the Evening Tilly, which I really enjoyed. I had good guys looking after me. Tam Duthie and George Cran, I think, coming after me, but a lot of good writers, that helped me through the day, and trying to learn, pick up things off of them. So I really enjoyed that, and I thought that was maybe what my next step was. I wasn't actually looking to get back into football. I thought, well, I'm actually enjoying this, but then the opportunity to go to East Fife came. I wasn't able to do both jobs because I had to do match reports in Dundee, and obviously East Fife would be playing this Saturday, so I decided at that point I would just go back into football. And again, I think we took East Fife. I think they were second bottom. We've just missed out in the playoffs that year. So it was again, a successful season ultimately. And then in the summer I got asked to go to Wraith, which wasn't too popular with the East Fife, given it's a sort of local rivalry. But it was an opportunity to go back full time. And if you're involved in football, you want to be full time. So it was, I enjoyed my time at Wraith. Unfortunately, lost the league in the last day of the season, and probably never recovered enough to get through in the playoffs. But if you're a home fan, you're looking, and we never lost a game at home that season, which was a great record in the league. But good people, and enjoyed. Good. It was again a good team. Just fell short at the end up.
Yeah, and then a couple other roles, and you ended up going over to Canada. How did that come about? It's such a left field thing to do. So I'm interested to hear how that happened. Again, it's probably like the Iceland thing. I'm guessing you knew somebody over there.
Well, actually, he's not the president now because we've got new owners. But the president was a Dundee fan. He knew I was out of work. He gave us a call, said they'd a new manager coming in. Would I like to go over and be assistant to him? Maybe just he could bounce off my experience. And I thought, well, it's something different. I'm not scared of a challenge. I'll go and try it. And it was a great club. Good people. The manager, Martin Nash, the other assistant, Mauro Estacchio, were good guys. Made me feel really welcome. And Angus made me feel really welcome at the club as well. The standard over there is decent. Probably top end championship, bottom end premiership. But it's very competitive. The one thing that I couldn't get used to was the travel and the time. We were flying 5 hours to go to games, and then there was a 3-hour time difference. So it's quite tough going if you're not used to that. But all the players didn't really seem to affect them. They were just used to that's what they do. I just couldn't get my head around it. Traveling 5 hours in a plane for a game. But it was enjoyable. But again, my wife and my wee one never travelled with me, and I found that the second season I just found it was getting too much. My wee one's grown up. He's grown up quickly. I felt I was missing too much of that, so I spoke to the president, and said, "Listen, I think it's time I went back home and spent time with my family." And he understood, and was excellent about it. And the manager understood as well. So we parted in good terms, and I still keep in touch with these guys because it was a very enjoyable, experience.
Yeah, no, I was actually, that was my next question, was did you go over there alone, or now you've alluded to, you left your family at home, so it must. I think this is a side people don't see with football, is that
Yeah,
yeah,
we're all human, and every day, like I want to work, I want to work in football, and sometimes you overlook certain things, and my wife and my wee one come over in the summer, and whenever they could, they did come over, um, but I just felt it was missing too much of him growing up, and when it comes to a choice between that and football, then the family's always going to win.
yeah, and obviously we arranged this interview, and a day later, after we agreed a date and a time, it came out in the courier that you're now returning back to Dens Park. So can you tell us a little bit about that? You're back at Dens now.
No, I think I'd spoken to Jamie McBrearty, who's the academy director, and Stephen Wright, who's the head of the academy. I'd spoke to them, and I'd been in previously. Actually, any time that I've not been managing, I always like getting back into the youth. I think you get so much out of the kids, are sponges. And as I say, I spoke to Jamie and Stephen, and I decided that I would like to come back in and help out, let the coaches bounce ideas off me, help, look at the kids, help the kids, if they've got questions, or just point out wee things for them. And I've only been back a couple of weeks, and I've enjoyed being back. There's a lot of good kids coming through the academy, and it'll be down to them, whether they make it or not, because a lot of them have technically got the very good attributes, and there's only so much coaches can do. They've really got to push themselves to get to the next level, and that's where the next level. The next level is where you get found if you've no really got that the sort of mentality. Then you'll get found out at the next level. So it's down to them, to push themselves, to give themselves the opportunity to play it, whether it's at Dens or wherever they end up. But there's certainly a good crop of young players coming through that will get an opportunity, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think I'm not the only person in saying this. I think they're learning off the best in yourself, Barry. It's
Thanks very
they
much.
really are. So what's the plans for you going forward then in football?
No, I'm quite happy, doing the academy. I'm not throwing my name out there for any jobs that come up. I'm quite happy just, going along. If somebody phones me up, then it'll be a conversation. But at the moment, I'm quite happy, just getting in, helping out the academy. I've got another job that I do full time anyway. So there's no so much pressure in trying to, get back in so that I can, pay my mortgage basically. So I'm quite comfortable at the moment where I am. And hopefully, I can become an asset for the academy as well and help these young ones become better players.
Yeah, no, absolutely perfect, and I think all Dundee fans are delighted to have you back at Dens. That's for sure. I think it's where you belong. Delighted. I think we're delighted to have you back. So no, Barry Smith, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for providing me such good memories growing up watching Dundee. It's as I said, alluded to earlier, it's a massive part of my childhood, and I only have fond memories. So I'm sure a lot of Dundee fans watching this will have the same appreciation I have. So no, thank you for coming on. Thanks for your time.
No, an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Ross. Thank you.
And thanks all of you for watching. We'll hopefully see you for the next one. Cheers.